And we are live. It's Dr. J here in the house with Dave Korsunsky. Dave, how are we doing today, man?
Always a pleasure when I get to jam with Dr. J on
Hey, I
on
appreciate
on
it.
on, on the air. So
I appreciate it.
yeah, good to be
Excellent.
back and connecting with you again, sir.
Hey, absolutely. So what's going on in Heads Up World? If anyone not connected or not with it, Heads Up is a great software that you can plug in a lot of your wearables. You can track various data from heart rate variability to blood sugar to sleep to you name it. And you can quantify, you can really get some interesting trends and correlations from it. What's happening in Heads Up World?
Yeah, well, we're a software program for the health optimizers out there, and optimizer could just be someone who's going to daily work and wants to kick more butt. It could be someone working on a chronic illness and really trying to figure out exactly what's going on. It could be a high performance athlete. So we're always building ways for people to understand and measure their health in new ways. So a lot of the work we do is helping people see all of their medical records together instead of in 50 different PDF files. And one of the things we're going to talk about today is there is some really, really amazing technology on the market that's becoming available to the everyday consumer that didn't exist 5 years ago. And this technology is letting us measure our health in ways that are incredibly insightful. Measurements, in many cases, that a lot of health and medical professionals are not even up to speed with. So we see a lot of people who actually have incredible amounts of information on their health and using this sophisticated data to self-optimize. So I'd love to just share a few of those new metrics and measurements and nuggets that people are using to fine-tune their health.
That's great. So you set up an account, headsuphealth.com. I'll put a link down below. And then once
Mhm.
you're there, you can plug wearables like your Fitbit. If you have an Oura Ring, you can connect that as well. You can also just create, ways where you can sync in or monitor blood pressure, blood sugar, ketones, right? So you can plug all these other markers in as you kind of correlate some of these other things you're talking about. Is that correct?
Yeah, the goal is to help people see cause and effect. So
Yeah.
you touched on one part of it, which is I can enter my nutrition information, my blood sugar, my weight, my heart rate, connect up all my stuff. Okay, that's cool. But the other part of it is also linking up your medical lab test results. And those are things
Yep.
like your thyroid markers, your
Yes.
inflammation markers, your lipid panels. And what we want to do is, okay, I've got all of this information here that's helping me measure my lifestyle choices. Am I getting enough sleep? Am I eating metabolically friendly foods? But we want to overlay that with your lab test results.
Mm.
So you can see exactly, okay, if I change this, what happens to my
Over
TSH
here.
marker?
Right.
That's what you and I first worked on many, many years
Yes.
ago in your office in
Yep.
Cupertino. And the
Hmm.
problem was like, okay, I got all these lab tests. They're somewhere in some PDF files. They're in Dropbox. They're in Google Drive. They're on my
Yeah.
computer. I think I have a patient portal. So that's like the state of the art for most people trying to understand their labs. You have the real hardcore patients that will actually put it all in a spreadsheet, which is better,
Exactly.
but still a massive pain in the ass. And
Hmm.
there's no way to cross-reference that with, for example, lifestyle changes, supplement protocols. So that's why we put it all on one screen. And then it becomes plain as day where you can start to see cause and effect. So that's the service we provide to people.
That's good. So why don't we just to make it visual, are you able to share your screen and we can go take a look, just kind of, you just going through it to people so they can see it. And while you're getting that set up, what are the top three things that the average person that's coming to your site, what are they tracking? What does that look like? What are the 3 or 5 most important things that you're seeing off the bat?
Absolutely. The number one is blood sugar.
Great.
Everybody's got some type of health condition. It could just be some extra weight in the midsection,
Hmm.
or it could be something such as, I don't know, prediabetes or epilepsy or cardiovascular disease. At the root of all of these issues is poorly controlled blood sugar. So, one of the most important things people are tracking, whether you're on a keto diet or a low carb diet, or you're just not wanting to deal with any of those symptoms, or in my case, I was very physically active and healthy, but I just couldn't get the fat off. At the end of the day, it was all metabolic. at the root. So the number one most important markers people are looking at are daily blood sugar.
Blood
We
sugar,
have
got
a
it.
lot of people who are also looking at blood ketone.
Mm-hmm.
We also see a lot of people measuring weight and body composition metrics because, as you know, as you start to control blood sugar and you control those post-meal blood sugar surges, weight starts to come off. So
Yeah.
we see a tremendous amount of people tracking weight. We're starting to see a lot more people getting comfortable with the idea of looking at their own blood work. And you don't have to be medically astute. You just need to know how to look at a few labs and work with a stud like yourself who can then provide some extra interpretation on those tests. So a lot of people doing blood work. And now there's some really cool metrics out there. Heart rate variability, nocturnal heart rate variability, being able to look at very detailed sleep cycle analysis, being able to look at correlations between food you eat and how that affects your sleep, when you eat and how that affects your sleep. So there's some incredible ways we can self-optimize now. And that's where we're seeing a lot of this very progressive people who are self-optimizing. Those are the things that they're looking at.
Very good. So we'll dive a little bit deeper into some of these markers. I'd like you to actually share it on screen so people that have a second that maybe are like, hey, how does this look? How does this
let me share
feel?
my
How do we
screen.
integrate?
This is going to be my personal data, Justin. So
Yeah.
I will hereby release you from all liability for accessing my PHI. I hereby voluntarily put my PHI on YouTube. Okay,
Perfect.
We're on record now, so we can do this demo.
So first off, what is heart rate variability? I mean, just for the average person, there is 70% of the heart cells are actually neurological cells. So there's this connection between the heart and the brain. And the more, let's just say, uneven between each beat, the more variability between each beat, it's a good marker of kind of the sympathetic or the parasympathetic nervous system response. The more variability, greater parasympathetic, less variability, more predictability between the beats, the more of a sympathetic kind of nervous system response. Is that kind of a good summary? Do you want to elaborate more on that?
No, you nailed it, man. It's basically,
Okay.
if you really want to strip it down, it's just a number to measure stress. So,
and it's a little bit contradictory because you would think the more predictable your heart rate is, the better, but not necessarily. The more predictable, the more of a sympathetic kind of response, the less predictable, more of a parasympathetic kind of response.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Basically, between each heartbeat, there is a certain amount of time. Let's just say it's measured in milliseconds. And each beat has a slightly different interval. There's a slight variation, 997, 1,000, 1,002. These are all the elapsed times between each beat. So actually, like you said, it's counterintuitive. Higher heart rate variability, more variation between each beat is representative of someone who is well recovered, well rested, managing their stress. And this is technology that 10 years ago, you would need to go into the hospital and get rigged up to hospital grade ECG machines to get a really detailed heart rate variability analysis. I'll stop sharing my screen here for a second. Now you just do it with one of these. This is something the average consumer can buy for $79 or something like the Oura Ring. And you track your heart rate variability and your stress on your own.
Love it. Absolutely love it. That's great. I have one of these guys here through HeartMath.
Exactly.
And this one goes right on your ear like this. And it plugs into your phone. Coherence, yeah.
It's putting you in a state of coherence. It's synchronizing, it's harmonizing the heart and the brain and the electrical signals in there. And you'll start to see, as you do some guided breathing, some relaxation, some meditation, you'll start to see your stress response actually get much better, your resilience get much better. So it's incredibly powerful, and there's more and more people starting to understand how to use HRV, heart rate variability.
Absolutely. And I have my device here going now, so I'll sync it up. Now, so we're able to track or chart this data. You're going to be plugging it in typically through an Oura Ring, which we'll talk in a little bit. What are some of the big strategies people can do to increase coherence or increase their heart rate variability? Is it just the breathing? Is it focus on the brain, on gratitude? What are the big factors that you're seeing that make a big difference and move the needle?
Well, for the record, I'm a technologist, so I'm going to give my technologist's take on it, and then Dr. J can put the actual healthcare professionals' expertise on it. But what affects heart rate variability, Doc, really goes back to the core functional medicine principles, which is infection present? Is there a pathogen? Is there a toxin somewhere in the body? So that can exacerbate heart rate variability. It could be a physical stressor. So is a person injured? Is a person dealing with a chronic illness? Are they getting sick? So that would be like an acute type of illness that can affect heart rate variability. And then the third part of it is the psychosomatic part, which is basically just a fancy word to say the emotional part. What is your daily life, your work situation, your interpersonal situations? That creates emotional stress. So those are the three things that really diet, blood sugar, those will be others. They all negatively affect our heart rate variability, and they are all what we would call stressors. So as you work on things like detoxification protocols, strengthening the immune system, working on digestive health, blood sugar regulation, meditation, that's when you'll see your heart rate variability start to get better.
Excellent. So for instance, just to make it tangible, on the psychosomatic side, this is inner balance right here. You can plug it in. I'm already in coherence, which is the red, and you can see it's monitoring the heart rate there, and it's looking at the variability. This is primarily just addressing the psychosomatic part. Basically, it's a 5-second breath in, 5-second breath out. And as this expands here in the middle, that's breathing in. Imagine your lungs expanding in. As it's contracting, that's your lungs contracting. Now, if you have infections or blood sugar or a whole bunch of inflammation going on, just changing your breathing and changing your mental focus doesn't fix those underlying issues. So kind of like what you said, we look at functional medicine, we look at the underlying physical, chemical, and emotional stressors, and that may be a nice palliative way to shift some of the emotional stressors and promote more of that parasympathetic nervous system response. But we got to put, it's one tool in the whole kind of conglomeration of tools. And then we want to be able to chart it. So maybe we incorporate this, we chart it, use an Oura ring or use some of the Inner Balance app. Maybe we incorporate other things like addressing infections.
Why don't we do a little demo here, Doc? Can you
Let's
see
do
my
it.
screen?
Yeah, looks great.
So what I'm going to do is actually, you can see here my meditation time. And I'm going to actually put my meditation time right next to my heart rate variability. Let's see, let's do it this way. So what you see on the screen here for people who are watching on YouTube is I track meditation time. I like to meditate. I can't say I do it every day, but I try to do 20 minutes in the morning before I pick up my phone and start the craziness. And then I try to do 20 minutes before bed. And so that's logged here. And then I can look at my heart rate variability, which is measured by the Oura ring. That's one of my favorite devices. There's others that I use and recommend, like the BioStrap and Elite HRV. These are things anyone can purchase and measure heart rate variability, basically measure stress. So as my meditation sessions increase, does my heart rate variability improve? And actually, there's a very, very strong correlation. And so the weeks where I'm meditating regularly, I'll see my heart rate variability in the high 40s and 50s. And the weeks when I'm traveling and I'm on the road and I don't have my healthy foods handy and I'm not getting as much sleep, I'll start to see my heart rate variability trend down. It could go as low as 20 sometimes if I've been on a red-eye flight and running to meetings. So I can use these as levers. And for me, as a business owner, everything I do is about my resiliency, my recovery, and my stress management. This is actually probably one of the most important numbers I can look at. And you can see here, if my blood sugar is good, you can see on about 88 on the blood sugar. I'm in a really nice state of nutritional ketosis here, about 0.8 millimolars. I'm getting really good sleep. You can see that my heart rate variability is dialed in. So that's just really simple examples of how people are doing these self-optimization exercises.
What correlations do you have with fasting or with ketones or with even just blood sugar fluctuations? Do you notice anything like that at all?
There's a couple aspects to that. One is There are people out there who will ask you to eat. Let's use your example. One of the first things you ever asked me to do as your patient was to do a functional glucose tolerance test.
Yeah.
You said, Dave, go at your favorite breakfast. I don't care what it is. Denny's, bacon and eggs, whatever. And you said, test your blood sugar before you eat your breakfast. So you're fasted.
Yep.
And then test your blood sugar 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours after said food.
Yep.
And so what you wanted to see was, does this person have a healthy response to that food? Does blood sugar rise? Okay, it doesn't go into the stratosphere. It comes up to a reasonable level. And then the body's systems kick in, and it has a nice taper back down to baseline. So a lot of people will measure blood sugar response to food. They'll also measure heart rate variability response to food. That may actually indicate there's a significant food sensitivity. So if you're highly gluten or highly lactose intolerant, you might see your HRV plummet after you eat some of those foods. So that's the connection directly with meal timing. If you look at it from a slightly different angle, which is something we wanted to talk about, which is like, when do you eat? When you eat can be just as important as what you eat. If you're backloading all of your caloric intake to your biggest meal, which happens at 7, 8 p.m., and then you go to bed at 10 or 11, and your body is still in a very pro-insulin state, you're still digesting, your heart rate is still elevated, that's going to trash your heart rate variability through the sleep cycle. So a really common example is people who are tracking HRV, and they'll adjust their meal timing. So one of the biggest things I learned, Justin, was I sleep the best and I have the best numbers the earlier in the day I finish eating. So I like to have my biggest meal with fork down, finished by 5 p.m. And I might have a light snack before bed, but then I'll see my heart rate and my heart rate variability just really plateau and bottom out through the night. Those are my best night's sleep. That is stuff I never would have known unless I had some data to help me.
Do you feel a difference though clinically regarding how you function or feel the next day? I see a lot of people, they get a lot of data on, for instance, the Oura Ring, and then I feel like they're getting stressed over the data, but maybe that data doesn't necessarily manifest in actual production or how they feel. Are you noticing a correlation with the data and how you perform and feel?
So there's a couple things you can do there. Well, one is actually, don't even look at the data until you're 2 or 3 hours into your day. And that way you can start your day and really just go through the first couple hours of your day just based on how you physically feel. And then later in the day, you're like, I'm kicking ass today. I feel amazing. I want to check it with the numbers. Or I feel like complete dog shit today. Okay, now I'm going to go and look at the numbers and see if they actually match how I feel. Most of the high quality devices on the market now are very predictive of how you physically feel. So I find a very, very strong correlation between what the numbers show me and how I feel in the morning, especially the devices that are looking at all of the variables during sleep, heart rate variability, heart rate, sleep cycles. They can get very, very close to how you're actually going to physically feel and perform. But you bring up a very important point. Some people get a little too wrapped up around the numbers, and that can also be an adverse effect. And that's the kind of the dark side of the data, if you will.
Because that can create a stress response in and of itself.
Yeah, totally. People are freaking out because they didn't get this number or that number. And at the end of the day, you're like, okay, 1 or 2 bad nights, I'm still going to feel good. I'm still going to perform fine. And we have to learn as individuals how to properly use this data so that it's not actually creating more stress than it's removing. And this is all new technology for us. So yeah, people are going to obsess over some of these numbers, and they may need to just take a break from the tracking. They may need to just learn how to take it with a grain of salt, maybe learn how to work with you to counsel them, to say, actually, it's not that bad. So interpretation and interpreting that in a way that is healthy is something we all need to strive for.
Yeah. One of my biggest metrics, because I'm creating content and doing podcasts and videos and dealing with patients from all over the world, My biggest metric is like verbal fluency. I'm thinking and talking on the go, and it's how clean can my words come off? How clean can I transmit thoughts and ideas, and keep it moving and keep it fluid? I'm doing lots of Q&A, so I'm constantly thinking and communicating on the go. How fluent and how smooth can that communication be? So that's a big thing. One of the things I notice is getting to bed before 11 o'clock makes a big difference. Taking adaptogens and extra stress handling nutrients makes a big difference. I think
Yep.
revving up that mitochondria. I still been tracking my Fitbit for my sleep, and just, I try to get 10 to 15,000 steps a day. So I have that data that I like. I'm looking to get the Oura Ring as well, so I can look at both of those combined. And then, if I'm doing a podcast or if I'm in a stressful situation or dealing with patients that are tough, I'll just try to use the inner balance, heart rate variability, and try to just check myself into that green place.
Yep.
And those are a couple of things people can do. And then I think if you get more data, I like seeing a change. Hey, if I take magnesium before bed, do I notice an improvement in heart rate variability or sleep quality? If I add adaptogens, or I add a meditation routine, or hey, if I exercise too late, what do I
Yep.
see? Is there a change in one direction or the other? So I like
Exactly.
using it as a means of bringing things in or out of my routine, stressors in, stressors out, and then just seeing what kind of change it happens. And I think you may notice that when we talked about doing functional glucose tolerance, hey, go eat the Denny's meal. What did it do to your glucose? And,
Yep.
I think you learn a lot from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it becomes very clear once you have access to some good information. Okay, I did a really heavy workout at 7 p.m. And actually, it took me an extra hour or two to fall asleep. And my heart rate was still jacked until 3 in the morning. How do I know? Well, here's the numbers right here. Here's all my heart rate measurements through the night. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to finish my heavy workout by 4 p.m. Then what happens to my heart rate through the sleep? And then the next day, like you said, I'm going to take 30 mils of CBD oil and some magnesium before bed. Then what happens? So these are all things people are playing with and learning and becoming more in tune with their physical body.
Exactly. And then you can develop correlation, and then you can see if that correlation equals causation, having pulled it in, pulled it out multiple times. And I think this is a really cool way, especially when you're already at a good level of health. Now you're kind of
Yes.
tweaking. I like this live kind of data feedback loop that you can get, and you can really develop. You can be your own N=1 trial, but you have harder data than just your subjective opinion.
Yeah, and I'm not dogmatic about any lifestyle. I'm not dogmatic about any way of eating, any diet. I think based on lifestyle factors, genetics, there's going to be different ways people need to eat. So carnivore, vegan, paleo, keto, whatever. Uh, find exactly what works for you, and then actually have some data to figure it out. Because the problem a lot of times is there's too much information out there, and how do you sift through it all? And then you share what you've learned, and someone gives you a completely opposite opinion, and then you have an existential meltdown, and then you realize, okay, let me just get back to the lowest common denominator here, which is some objective data. If I change my diet according to what Dr. Justin tells me, let's say I go autoimmune keto for 6 weeks, according to Dr. J, do the labs get better? That is simple stuff anyone can do, but you need the numbers. And there's a lot of people who eat and live a certain way, but their labs might look like total crap. So that's where the numbers can actually maybe tell you that you're not doing as good as you thought you were.
Exactly. Also, one of the big things is depending on where your level of health is, what tier of health you're in. Let's say here's the highest tier, here's a middle tier, here's a low tier. People that are in a low tier and already have hormonal issues or thyroid issues or an autoimmune condition, bringing in something like intermittent fasting may actually be a stressor. Bringing in something like resistance training or interval training or some kind of a more intense exercise may actually be a stressor. But this person up here at a higher level of health, they may be able to do some eating restriction before bed and actually benefit. They may be able to do more resistance training and CrossFit and benefit. These are the people that may do well with carbohydrates at 200 or 300 grams per day, because of their oxidative stress and how much resistance or aerobic training they're doing. So there's different tiers. And I always recommend like figure out what tier you're on, and don't try to be, at the lower health tier and do things that people are on at the higher level of tier doing. It's not a direct correlation. It's not like these people are healthy because they do that. Because they're healthy, they can do that. And you have to kind of, figure out what avenue to go into.
You bring up some really, really important points there. One is, so there's probably a lot of people, and you've mentioned this before to me. There are people who are actually too low carb, and
Yeah.
they're training too hard in the gym doing CrossFit. And you'll see that. You'll see your HRV and it's in the toilet. And maybe your thyroid numbers are in the toilet and you're not feeling great and you're not sleeping great and you're cold. And then you ratchet up the carbohydrates and you look at the numbers and you're like, holy crap, I feel better. I'm sleeping better. My HRV is better. So that's a part of it. And then you bring up another great point, which is when I was working with you as a patient, there was a
Yeah.
period where I was completely healthy and I could go train like a beast in the gym and then just basically go to bed and have a great sleep and go to work the next day. And then as I went through some life stressors, I got to the point where that same type of exercise actually was a nightmare for me because my body was already in a high stress state. So that same workout that I could have done without even thinking about it a year ago, now my cortisol would stay elevated and I'd be awake till 3 a.m. because my body was already in a stress state. Now I'm out of that stress state and I can do those types of exercises I couldn't do before. So again, that's where having some numbers can also be really, really helpful.
I remember you were doing an insanity workout. It was like a 90-minute type of interval circuit
Oh
thing. It
man, I
was
was
quite
doing
intense.
P90X. I was commuting from San Francisco to Palo Alto every
You had
day down the
hour and a half
101.
commute. You're working
And
10 hours a day already.
I
A lot of
didn't
stress.
have good knowledge about how to eat healthy for my body in terms of blood
Right.
sugar. I was just still standard American diet, and it pushed me like into a very high stress state. And then I was no longer able to do the types of things physically that I could do before until those stressors were removed.
And this
And
is where
that's where,
having an Oura ring or some kind of heart rate variability is helpful because you can go into that workout and be like, ooh, I got a lower number today. Maybe let's just do a little bit of yoga and some walking or just a couple of little bodybuilding resistance movements and be out of the gym in 20 or 30 minutes. So you can
I
kind of
can't even
curtail that.
imagine what my HRV numbers were when I was going through that. I don't even know that there was really good technology to measure it at that time. This was 2012, 2013. A lot of this amazing technology didn't even exist. There was really no easy ways to measure it. So I wish I had that information. Now I know exactly what my HRV numbers would look like in that situation, and I'd know that some serious interventions would be required. So
for like interval or circuit training, you may look and make sure you have a higher rate of HRV score for that day. And if not,
well,
maybe you're going
day-to-day
to be
change
engaging
is
in more
not so
relaxing
important.
things.
You can have a crappy night's sleep and a crappy HRV number just one day. That doesn't mean I'm not going to train. I might
But would
not
you
be able to.
adjust the intensity and length for that day though?
Maybe not. But if my HRV was in the toilet for a week straight, now I'm really going to change my training measurements. So a lot of the times we'll look at 7-day averages. Maybe you just had a bad night's sleep, but the previous 6 nights you were dialed in. You might still be able to train pretty hard on that day. But like I just came off 3 weeks of straight business travel, and my numbers were in the tank for a couple weeks. I'm really going to do some heavy resilience before I train. So that's where having like 7 days, 14 days trailing data. I can show an example here if you want, but that's where it would be really helpful to look at some longer trends versus just day-to-day acute variations.
So acute versus day to day, or sorry, acute versus long term. So you would look at both when you make that. I mean, I think I
Yep.
do a lot of that on my own intuitively. I think if you kind of just get an assessment of how's food been, how's sleep been, how's stress been, and then from there you can always gauge it. My general consensus is high intensity, low amount of time in the gym,
Mm-hmm.
high amount of intensity while there. And my big gauge for me is always walk out feeling more energized. So I'll always stop the workout
100%.
prematurely
Yep.
so I feel better. I'll always make sure emotionally once I come down from my heart rate being at 150, 160 after I end back to baseline, can I emotionally repeat it? And then how do I feel that next day? And that's a pretty good gauge that most people can use without even having an HRV, just to make sure that that exercise is not a stressor.
Yeah, 100%. So you can do it based, if you know your body well enough, you can just do it instinctively, intuitively. You can also get data. A lot of athletes at the elite level are looking at 7-day, 14-day trends in HRV, and they're looking to say, okay, I just introduced a really new heavy training regimen. is my body adapting properly? So that's where you do need some hard data and some trends. So that's one way. And then the other way, like you said, is just knowing yourself well enough and doing it instinctively. I'm a data nerd. I like the numbers.
Yeah, I think it's great. And what other things are you tracking or charting against the HRV? Have you added more variables to compare it? How many variables can you compare in Heads Up
Yeah,
right now?
Dr. Justin said we have to graph up to 7 things at a time. So we finally did that.
Yes, you did it.
Let's
Great.
begin here, Doc. So I'm going to graph my heart rate variability here. At the previous version of the software, you could only graph 2 markers at a time.
Yes.
Now you can do up to 6. Actually,
I
if you have
love that.
blood pressure. So let's look at my heart rate variability, which you can see here. And you can see it's been just trending up nicely. And let's also just put my meditation time on the graph and see how that correlates.
So this is awesome right here.
So you can see I really got into my meditation routine and started measuring it about mid-month. And you see right where I start those 20-minute meditation sessions, sure enough, HRV is actually at the highest point it's been in the last 30 days. Go figure.
I love that.
And then also let's look at my blood sugar, which I track with my Keto Mojo, and what's happening with blood sugar. Nice and low, right in the mid 80s, dialed in. So then you can start to look over different time ranges. And
do you have any ketones with that too?
I do. Funny you should ask, Doc.
Hey, look at that.
There we go. Let's put blood ketones on the graph and let's take off blood sugar. So here's the ketones. You can see I'm in a really nice state of nutritional ketosis the whole last 30 days.
I kind of see a little bit of a correlation there with heart rate variability and ketones. Do you see that? I see a little bit.
Yeah, you can see that as the ketones are high, the HRV is high right here. As the ketones are a little lower, the HRV. So that is a really nice correlation. We could look and say, okay, as people go into nutritional ketosis, does their HRV get better? I would probably bet yes. You're burning a much cleaner fuel source.
Fuel source. Think of glucose and carbohydrate as like a dirty diesel kind of fuel that has a lot of stink to it afterwards. And think of, this is like a really clean.
Here's the correlation, Doc. I just took meditation time off. So now we're just looking at nocturnal HRV, basically HRV while sleeping, and ketones. You're right, man. There's probably a really nice correlation curve there we could plot for people. There you go, man.
That's awesome. It makes sense because the more your blood sugar goes up and down, you're surging insulin and you're surging cortisol and adrenaline, and that can just by itself create a sympathetic nervous system response. And that makes sense because that would decrease heart rate variability. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yep. So we just found a really nice correlation on nutritional ketosis and heart rate variability.
Well, I got a Keto Mojo just recently. I've had some older blood sugar monitors and I got a new one. So I'll have to get the Keto or the Oura Ring as well and now that I know you have 6 things set up, that was the thing I was waiting for. So I could start charting some of this data. So that's awesome. I'm going to start that right away.
Yeah. The Keto Mojo also syncs electronically with our app. So if you have a Keto,
how does that work?
You basically, I'll show you. Let me just get my Keto Mojo.
Yeah, this will be great for people to see.
Yeah, this is a thing we work directly with Dorian and the team over at Keto Mojo to do. There was no ketone meter on the market that we could sync with electronically. All the Precision Extras and the Neos and all that stuff, they don't have a mobile app. So there was no way for us to sync the data. So if you have the Keto Mojo, which is here, then all you do is you go to their website and you order the Bluetooth connector. And so the Bluetooth connector just goes right in where the test strip goes. And then it sends the readings to the Keto Mojo app, and then it automatically sends them to your Heads Up Health dashboard. So you can see I have the Keto Mojo readings. Let me just change this to Keto Mojo. I have the glucose, the ketones, and the index, the glucose ketone index. These automatically sync with Keto Mojo. The Oura Ring automatically syncs on your dashboard. We have a fasting timer, so you can track your fasting intervals. We'll sync with Chronometer, MyFitnessPal, so you can get your nutrition data on there, your blood pressure, your body composition.
Dude, I'm excited now that you have this multiple data correlation chart.
And then the other part of it is, let me just show you guys this as well. This is really kind of our differentiator, Justin, is then you can actually look at people's lab test results and see if the numbers are getting better as stress goes down. So as HRV goes up, Does my HSCRP number get better? Does my inflammation markers get better? So that's where having the blood work here actually becomes super important. That's what we're trying to create, is like, if I make a lifestyle change, I see it on the dashboard. Do my labs get better? Am I healthier? That's the main function of our software app.
That's very cool. Is there any lab stuff that you wanted to show any of the listeners that you want me to take a look at now?
I'm probably overdue for some labs. With mine personally, some of the ones that I have to keep a really close eye on are ferritin. I've
Yeah,
had high ferritin, which means I do need to give blood pretty regularly to keep that number down.
I need to as well.
Yeah, so that's one I monitor very closely. Homocysteine is another one because of some of the MTHFR mutations. If I'm not taking that methylfolate supplement, then my homocysteine will be out of range high, 11, 12, 13, 14.
Good to
When I'm
know.
properly supplementing, it'll be down 6, 7, 8. So that's one I really keep a close eye on. That's something I learned from my genetic report. You can get one from Nutrition Genome or others, and they showed me some methylation issues. So homocysteine is one that I keep a really close eye on. My thyroid numbers are good. I've had some high reverse T3, which you helped me with. A lot of that was just cleaning up blood sugar and stress. So, and HSCRP, just an all-around really good marker of inflammation that I keep a close eye on.
I love it.
And the cool thing is you can get labs yourself now online. So you can order them from Dr. J, or you can just go get them and order them yourselves, even if your doctor won't run some of these tests, like fasting insulin. Super cool number. Really good early predictor of metabolic health. A lot of doctors won't order it because there's no diagnostic code for it. So just order it yourself, or call Dr. J, get him to order it. Track it yourself. Make some changes.
Love it. Love it. We'll put links down below to get subscribed in with Heads Up Health, and we'll do some more podcasts on these topics. I'm going to get some of my stuff set up here, and we'll do some live podcasts here with my
Doc,
experience, my data.
we will give you a discount on your subscription. Just because I like you, you qualify for the friends
I
and
appreciate
family
it.
discount.
I appreciate it, Dave. Awesome, man.
Don't mention it.
I appreciate it. Anything else you wanted to dive in here today?
No, it's always good jamming with you. We're continuing to build this thing. It's been a water process over 2 years. Sometimes sometimes it's quick, but there's I online talking about some of the new health metrics and how people can use them, can get a little more dialed in on their health. So I always take the opportunities to come on the show when they come from Dr. J. So thank you for having me, sir.
Excellent, Dave. Well, really appreciate the amazing technology that you've produced, the ease of access, and the ability to sync up and make correlations on your own, so we can all be our own little N=1 guinea pig, so to speak. So really appreciate that, Dave. We'll be in touch real soon, and look forward to connecting again.
Fantastic.
Take care, man.
Yes, indeed.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.